Hey, welcome back to Reliable Sources. I'm Brian Stelter. Nobody likes leaks, right? Except for plumbers and reporters. But leaks from anonymous sources, sometimes whistleblowers, provide vital information to the public. President Trump knows this, and he's been railing against it, against leaks that linked several of his aides to Russia, and ultimately led to the ouster of his national security advisor, Michael Flynn. Republican lawmakers are now calling for leak investigations, and Trump, who embraced WikiLeaks during the campaign, says that current leakers will pay a big price. Here to discuss, Glenn Greenwald, the co-founding editor of The Intercept and the Pulitzer Prize winner for his reporting on Edward Snowden leaks. Also here, Dana Priest, reporter for The Washington Post and Knight Chair in Public Affairs Journalism at the University of Maryland. And let's bring back Carl Bernstein, CNN political analyst, who's been working on these Russia stories. Dana, let me start first with you. You've written extensively about Michael Flynn. Your reactions to his resignation being forced out this week?
Well, my reactions is the media they were able to get information that was pretty stunning given how quickly the information did come out. I think that represents one kind of leak, which is the kind that happens when people inside the government, good people who want to do right thing by the president, by the way, are very, very worried about what's going on inside. And that's where you get people leaking, for instance, transcripts or the summaries of transcripts from intercepts with foreign leaders. You saw that with Australia. You saw that when he talked to, when Flynn talked to the Russians. So I'm not surprised. I think the Flynn matter is a culmination of things. It's not just this one thing, as we reported before and others did. Flynn is a rather erratic person, and I can't imagine that they wouldn't have discovered that sooner rather than later.
You're describing the motivations of leakers, and Carl, I wonder if you can provide some insight into this as well. You worked with a number of other CNN colleagues on the stories about that that dossier about Russia and Trump. You've been working anonymous sources about this. There's been claims that this is all just angry former Obama staffers, loyalists to Obama leaking. Can you give us insight into whether that's true?
Well, first of all, the whole process of reporting is to piece together from various sources at various institutions with various points of view a story that is based on fact to the extent that you can. And that's what was done on these stories that CNN has done. Some of the sources may well be from close to Donald Trump. Some of the sources might be former Obama administration officials. Some might be still in the intelligence administration agencies in positions that are career positions. All over the place. Some are in the private sector. Donald Trump has no idea of where these stories are coming from, and the idea of a leak investigation here, as I said earlier, is to intimidate. But one other thing about Trump, it was said in the earlier segment that we should not pay too much attention to his words and look at just what he does. In the case of Donald Trump especially, words matter. His words are an MRI of his mind, and so far that MRI is showing all kinds of masses in the brain that ought to concern not just reporters but people all over this country, because they are expressed in demagogic and frightening and treacherous words that have meaning in terms of threats to democracy.
Dana, I see you shaking your head.
Yeah, I mean, I really think that at this moment we should eliminate the adjectives and stick to the facts. I mean, when you look on your mobile device at what all the mainstream media is reporting on, you will get, right after the first couple stories, you'll get a whole series of editorials that tend to be all anti-Trump. So on the one hand, I am not condoning his attacks on the media. It is not unusual for a president to not like the media. But what I'm saying is right now we should pay attention to the language that we're using and stick to the facts and eliminate the opinion and eliminate the adjectives. And
Carl,
if we do that, I think we have a better chance of convincing the people that we're not for anybody in particular, but we are for unearthing that is the closest to the truth we can get.
And Glenn, I promise I want to bring you in, but Carl, I think you're being criticized there. I want to hear your reaction.
First of all, we need to, as Dana says, to do our job and report the best obtainable version of the truth. At the same time, we need to evaluate as reporters what it is the President of the United States is saying. That is a big part of the story, just as it was when we were looking at Richard Nixon's words as well as his actions. The two fit together. Should we be engaged in spend most of our time on heated rhetoric defending ourselves? No, but the function of the press is something that we need to explain at this moment, and the best explanation is through our reporting, and the second best explanation, which needs to be elaborated, is what is it that we do under the First Amendment, and we need to explain that.
Let's explain the use of anonymous sources. Glenn, you have said that the president's right when he says some of these leaks are illegal, meaning people are sharing information illegally. But you say it's justified. Why is it justified?
If you look at the reporting of the people who are on this panel, what you see is that some of the most important revelations that have strengthened American democracy have come from people inside the government, as Dana said, discovering information and then giving it to reporters because they believe that the people have the right to know that their leaders were engaged in illegal or deceitful conduct. That's what happened with the leakers who exposed General Flynn's lies. And although the conduct is illegal, it's also, in my view, quite noble because it strengthens democracy. The problem is that if you look at the last 8 years, there has been a very concerted war on not just sources and whistleblowers, but also journalists, implemented by not Donald Trump, but by the Obama administration. More sources prosecuted under the 1917 Espionage Act than in all previous administrations combined. Journalists such as James Rosen at Fox News and Jim Risen at the New York Times, and those of us who worked on the Snowden reporting, constantly threatened with prosecution or having our phone records subpoenaed and the like. And Democratic office holders in D.C. were virtually unanimous in the idea that people who leak information that's classified are villains, they're traitors, they ought to go to prison. And this framework has been created, both rhetorical and legal, over the last 8 years that says that people who leak classified information, regardless of how important that information is, ought to be punished. And that's the rhetoric and the framework that Donald Trump is seizing on. And it's the reason why it's been so damaging to have watched Democrats who suddenly love leaks, now that it's helping them, have waged such an aggressive war on journalism and investigative reporting over the last 8 years.
But
What
you
would you
notice,
Go ahead, Dana.
No, but you notice that nobody's backing down, and that's nobody in the press yet is backing down, and I really don't think they're going to. This tension between classified information that needs to be kept secret, or that the government says, and the reporters who are trying to do their job has gone on forever. Usually we win, and what I mean by that is usually, especially recently in the last decade, information gets out and reporters continue to do their job. So I would again, and that's what you're seeing now. In fact, the reporters that did this national security reporting are the best in the business. They've been at it for a decade, and they have very good sources who've learned to trust them and learn not to go overboard. So I think, look at the bylines. Adam Entos, Greg Miller, people from the New York Times. They're careful. Sometimes they get things wrong. That doesn't mean that things are fake news. It just means that we don't ever have a perfect view into the world. And if Donald Trump really wanted to put an end to the speculation that Michael Flynn was working on behalf of the Russians, he is the declassifier in chief. Right. He could release those intercepts today, and I think he should.
That's the most important. That's the most important point. We lost Glenn's audio. We'll keep talking with him on Twitter. Dana, Carl, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Up next here, for a bunch of communications pros,